And remember, when we spoke about Yoshiyahu, we talked about his early years with Chizkiyahu, and then we talked about the Yeshivat Yoshiyahu may have lasted all the way into the time of Shivat Zion, the return of biblical of the exiles from Babylonia. Jeremiah really is one continuous unit, but he's going to span two very different realities. One reality of Chizkiyahu of Yirmiyahu is going to be the king Josiah, Yoshiyahu, and Yoshiyahu is a revivalist king. Yoshiyahu is a king who is going to restore the Israelite kingdom, and we're going to see exactly in what way he does this. This is a very interesting historical period. But spoiler alert, Yoshiyahu dies very suddenly. And exactly how he dies is actually important in terms of the geopolitics of what's going on. But the moment Yoshiyahu falls, essentially there are two kings in quick succession of maybe months each, and then we enter into the period of Yehoiachin. Yehoiachin is Yoshiyahu's son, but he's really a puppet of Egypt. And so with the fall of Josiah, you have the final end of Jewish independent rule in Israel until David Ben Gurion. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Until Judah the Maccabee. So the periods of independent Jewish rule are Josiah is let's say David to Josiah. After Josiah, you wait until Yehuda Maccabee. After Yehuda Maccabee, and in 63 CE, we have to wait till David Ben Gurion. But Yirmiyahu doesn't disappear when Yoshiyahu dies. Yirmiyahu is around. Yirmiyahu is very much an active figure. And then Yirmiyahu will come into, if you will, his second role, which is going to be the role of social critic. And he is a very poignant social critic. But let's first look at a little bit of background into what's going on. So Yirmiyahu is born in the year 640. Yirmiyahu is born in exactly the same year that Yoshiyahu rises to the throne. So before Yoshiyahu, you have essentially the reign of King Manasseh. Now, does anybody know what King Manasseh is famous for?
That's he set up the mizbachot,
Yes, good.
altars,
right?
For the idols.
Correct. Yeah. Manasseh Manasseh is likely the king when the Mishnah says that one of the things that happened on Shivasa B'Tammuz is He'emid Tzelam Beheichal, that they set up an idol in the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, or in the center of the Beit HaMikdash. So this is King Manasseh. King Manasseh is the nadir of the Davidic dynasty. The worst possible moment is when the Assyrian religion is full-scale adopted by King Manasseh into the Beit HaMikdash. And Manasseh has adopted Assyrian politics. He has adopted Assyrian culture. He has adopted Assyrian religion. And for 55 years, essentially, the Assyrians dominate Yerushalayim. Now, there's a really bitter irony to this whole picture, because if you recall, Manasseh's father, Chizkiyahu, had this absolutely stunning victory against the Assyrian king Sancherib. Sancherib, or as the academics like to call him, Sennacherib. Sancherib, who claims to have trapped King Chizkiyahu like a bird in a cage, fails in Yerushalayim. he never breaks Yerushalayim. But yet, the Assyrian kingdom manages to infiltrate Yerushalayim through Menashe in a political and cultural scenario that dominates. Now, what happens when Yirmiyahu is about 14 years old in the year 626? Now remember, the years descend, were before the Common Era. So Yirmiyahu was born in 640. In the year 606, Ashur Banipal is the last king of Assyria. So he dies. After his death, this kingdom of Assyria, which had dominated the Near East for almost a century, begins to disintegrate and lose power. In 625, Nebuchadnezzar, he founds a new kingdom, the kingdom of the Kasdim, which is essentially the ancient royal throne of Babylonia. And they're going to start to try and expand their borders. And they're going to try and replace Assyria and become the ruler of the Near East. So in 612, the city of Nineveh is the capital city of Assyria, is captured by the Babylonians. And we see that what's happening in this period is that the Assyrians are crumbling. So I always thought, whenever I had learned about this, I had sort of learned about, Yoshiyahu. All of a sudden he wakes up, he realizes his father was a wicked king, and he sends the religious cultural status of Yerushalayim into an entirely different direction. And I thought, you read these things. You read these things in the Chumash. In the Tanakh. You read them in the Talmud. You think, okay, he just had a good Esha Torah lecture. There must have been some, rabbi who really inspired him. And it's possible there was. We don't know that such a thing didn't happen. But the atmosphere is also ripe, because the pressure to adopt the politics of Ashur, to adopt the culture of Ashur. What's the point of worshiping the gods of Ashur if Ashur just got smacked around by the Babylonians, right? It tends to be in the ancient Near East that if you lost, your gods don't tend to remain very popular. And so here, not only is Yoshiyahu in a scenario where the thumb of Ashur is lifted off of his shoulders and off the shoulders of his people, but he takes this as an opportunity to restore the foundations of Bnei Israel. And he goes and the things that he gets rid of, as you read them in the book of Melachim, are truly astounding. I have quoted it before. Anybody if I've quoted it enough, you were also shocked by it, and you'll remember what it was that Yoshiyahu cleared off of the Temple Mount. What is the most shocking thing that he removed from the Temple Mount? Tony already mentioned the Mizbachot, the various altars to Assyrian gods. But what is maybe the most shocking thing to the modern ear?
Was there something in the way of a prostitution ring?
Yes, but not your run of the mill. It is a cult of it. It is some kind of a cult of male prostitution, Beit HaKadeshim, in the masculine. And there is some reference in the book of Eov to the fact that this was part of the sort of a cycle of abuse that would happen. And one of the interesting suggestions of this is that in the Torah, it says etnan zona umechir kelev. It juxtaposed two things. Two things you're not allowed to bring as the financing for your korban, or give to the Beit HaMikdash. The price of a prostitute and the sale of a dog. There are some who suggest that those are actually synonymous, based on some of the practices of the Canaanite cultures. And so we know that Yoshiyahu cleans that up, and he undertakes a massive campaign to restore what's happening.
Rabbi,
yes.
Can I ask a question? Was at that time, was there also human sacrifice?
There is the cult of Molech. I don't know if the cult of Molech preserves until the time of Yirmiyahu. I am not 100% sure. I would have to look at that parak again to remind myself.
All right, thank you.
But I want you to remind yourself for a moment that Yoshiyahu, he's like, in a way, he's a little bit like a David Ben-Gurion. He's got a Zionist vision. And his Zionist vision is about building a great Jewish kingdom. But there is a piece of this puzzle which we very often don't look at. And that is when you go back to the days of his great-grandfather, Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu fends off those self-same Assyrians. He fends off the Assyrians when the Assyrians had already ravaged the northern kingdom. They had already deported all of those who lived in the north, and they had sort of jumbled up the Middle East. So if you've ever heard of the story of the Good Samaritan. So the Good Samaritan references the fact that there were a group of people who lived in the Shomron known as the Samaritans, who were in competition with the Jews. The Samaritans, the Talmud calls them the Kutim, because where do they come from? They come from Kuta. Where is Kuta? Kuta somewhere in Iraq. The Assyrians had transported the people of Kuta into the Shomron, and maybe they transported the people of the Shomron into all sorts of other places. That really a vast portions of the tribes of Reuven, Gad, Asher, Ephraim, Dan had all been removed. They had been vanquished by the Assyrians, and they became scrambled eggs all over the rest of the ancient Middle East and the Assyrian kingdom, all the way possibly to Ethiopia. And this is how that is the 10 lost tribes. This is how the 10 tribes got lost. Now, even in the days of Chizkiyahu attempts to reunite the tribes, and he does this through the Pesach. And he at first fails, absolutely, but he then has a second attempt. Maybe he rescues the second attempt. He manages to realign the calendars of the two peoples. He manages to have one successful Pesach with some of the people from the north, but the north remains disjointed. Yoshiyahu wants to unite this greater kingdom. I'm going to share a screen with you for a moment. Okay, so this is the map of the tribes of Israel. Now, I'm going to show you what Yoshiyahu's kingdom looked like. Yoshiyahu's kingdom essentially is here. This is the kingdom of his grandfathers. More or less, this is where Yoshiyahu rules. So in this area, this is Yoshiyahu's kingdom. Just give you a little bit of contour line so you can see where he is. Now, changing colors, the northern kingdom was this area up here. Right? It went all the way up to Tel Dan. Right? This whole area was what was vanquished by the Assyrians. Yoshiyahu wants to recapture this area. He wants to take it back, and he wants more subjects. And the natural extension of that is this northern kingdom. Now, I realize I've gone several minutes without mentioning the name of the person we're supposed to be studying, who is, of course, Yirmiyahu. And there's a good reason for that. I needed to give you this background because I want to tell you about Yirmiyahu's first job. Yirmiyahu's first job may well have been to go up to the north and he was the agent of the king in order to recruit these tribes to be a part of Yoshiyahu's kingdom. The question we may start with is the first sentence of the book of Yirmiyahu. First sentence of the book of Yirmiyahu tells us just one biographical detail about Yirmiyahu. Actually, I should say a couple different ideas. It says, Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiyahu mina Kohanim. So these are the words of Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiyahu mina Kohanim. So Yirmiyahu is of the tribe of the Kohanim. Asher ba'anatot. He was in this city called Anatot. So, Be'eretz Binyamin, in the land of Binyamin. So there are several different suggestions for where Anatot is. By the way, the background that I chose for today was one of these selected places of where Anatot is. So some people say that Anatot is very close to Yerushalayim. It is a Kohanic city, but not of the Kohanim who are active in the Beit HaMikdash. So over here, this where I'm circling in blue is one idea of where Anatot is. Just to orient you in terms of the Israeli map, in no particular order of importance, over here is where Rabbi Avi Berman lives in Pisgat Zev. So that just gives you that. Over the Harat Sofim is over here. The Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Mount Scopus, and over here is the old city of Jerusalem. So really, there are two hills in between where Yirmiyahu lives and where the temple is. That is one possibility. There are others who say that Anatot is really much farther north. That Anatot is really hold on, let me just actually hold on. I'm learning how to use all these things. I got to take off my drawings. Okay. There's some who say that Anatot is really much farther north, which is up here where this marker is over here, well north. Now I don't know how that is identified as Binyamin. There's a third place where it could be the Arab village of Anatata, is another possibility of where Anatot is. But here's the interesting point. The interesting point is Anatot is in Binyamin. Now, I want to take you to the chapter 31 of Yirmiyahu. So give me a second just to get there. Okay, if this looks familiar to you, by the way, it is going to be familiar because it is the Haftorah of the second day of Rosh Hashanah. So here it says.
Oh, Jonathan's joined the rabbi's class.
Ko Amar Hashem, so says Hashem, Matzachein Bamidbar. We have found comfort in the wilderness. Am Sari Decharav, those who have survived the sword. Haloch lahargio Yisrael, right? I have come to bring you calm, to bring you rest, Israel. Merachok Hashem nirali. I saw God from afar. Va'avat olam avticha al kain mishachticha chesed. I have loved you with everlasting love. Therefore, with affection, I have drawn you near. Okay. Jumping to verse number 7. I will bring them from the north country. The Assyrians attacked from the north. And I will bring them back from the corners of the earth. I'm going to bring a huge group of people back, says Hashem. Right? They may cry along the way. They may have to cross rivers, but they're not going to trip. And Ephraim is my firstborn. Now, the term Bechori is not an idle term in Jewish thought. Who is first called Bechori? B'ni Bechori refers to who in the Torah? Anybody know? It is what Hashem tells Pharaoh.
Oh,
The children of Israel are B'ni Bechori. All 12 tribes. But there is a competition amongst the tribes for who is going to be the first of the tribes. Right? And for hundreds of years, for 300 years, you have Jerusalem saying Yehuda is Bechor, and Shomron saying nope, Ephraim is Bechor. Yirmiyahu belongs to the kingdom of Yehuda. About that there is no debate. But here in his Nevuah, he's saying Ephraim is the Bechor. He's saying, the Ephraim is the firstborn. Going out there in the wilderness, letting everybody know who really should be sitting on the throne of Israel? Ephraim. Shimu dvar Hashem goyim, hagidu va'im mimerchak, v'imru mizarei Yisrael yikatsenu ushmaro karoa edro. Listen, all you nations. I'm telling you now, the one who caused Israel to spread out, that's the one who's bringing them back. Hashem. Kifada Hashem et Yaakov, ugo'alo miyad chazak mimenu. God is redeeming Yaakov. Uvo v'rinenu b'marom tzion v'naru al tov Hashem al dagan v'tirosh v'yitzar v'al bnei tzavon v'ayiti nafsham kegan raveh lo yosifu l'dava od. And they shall come in the sight of Zion and flow goodness of the Lord, right, and wheat and wine and oil and young flock and herd. There's going to be money too, right? But here comes the real punchline. Ko amar Hashem, kol berama nishma. A voice is heard on the heights. Nihi tamrurim. A bitter weeping. Rachel mevaka abanah. Rachel weeps for her children. Now, Rachel is the grandmother of whom?
David.
Ephraim.
Nachon, Ephraim. Rachel is not related to David. Because the way the lines go, Leah gives birth to Yehuda. David HaMelech is from the tribe of Yehuda. He's not related. I guess Rachel is his great aunt. Because she's Leah's sister. But Rachel belongs to Ephraim. Ephraim is the descendant from Rachel. Rachel mevaka abanah. Rachel is weeping for her children. This is a call to the Bnei Ephraim. Yirmiyahu is not talking to Yehuda here. He's talking to Ephraim. He's saying to you guys, the lost tribes, I'm calling you back. Ma'ana lihinachem abanah ki einenu. She refused to be comforted. Her children are not there. Ko amar Hashem, min'i kolech mibechi ve'nech midima ki yesh schar lepolatech num Hashem v'shavu me'eretz oyev. They're going to come back from the land of the enemy. Skipping just a bit. Again, 19. Haben yakir li Ephraim, im yeled sha'ashuim. Who is the dear one to me? Ephraim. the Yeled Shashuim, he is the child of my youth, right? Of the toys of youth. Ki midei dabribo zachor as karenu od. I still remember him. Alkein hamu me'ai lo rachem arachamenu numashem. Right? My heart yearns for him. I will surely have compassion on him, and he will come back. One second, just okay. We'll leave the rest of this chapter here. What Yirmiyahu is doing here is this is a call to the northern kingdom. But I discovered something very interesting. Actually, I shouldn't say I discovered it. I discovered it from the lips of Rabbi Binyamin Lau, and it's a fascinating point. So I want to go back to the death of King Yoshiyahu. The death of King Yoshiyahu. I'm going to show you. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go back to the map of Israel. So here we go. We're back on the map of Israel. Now again, I'm going to outline the outline of what is known as Yehuda. So more or less, this is Yehuda, maybe a little broader than that, but this is what is understood to be the kingdom of Yehuda. Where after the kingdom split, the kings like Yehoshaphat and Rechavam and Chizkiyahu, this is the land they ruled over. The north belonged to a different kingdom. That was the kingdom where the capital was. I'll do it in a different color so you see. The capital was Shomron, which is probably right about here. Right? Oh no, Samaria. Sorry, right here, Shomron. Different kingdom. Now, what's going to happen? The way that King Yoshiyahu dies is that there's going to be a great standoff between the two great kingdoms, Babylon and Egypt, and the Egyptians will make them yellow. The Egyptians are coming up from the south. They're taking the coastal road. They're on their way up, and they're going to ultimately head to Syria over here. Yoshiyahu comes to meet them in a very odd place. Yoshiyahu comes to meet them in Har Megiddo, in what becomes Armageddon. Armageddon is Har Megiddo. I always thought, okay, he had a right to meet him there. The guy is trampling over his territory. Yoshiyahu has this biblical idea that cherev lo ta'avor ba'artechem, if you're a righteous king, the sword will not pass through your land. And you should oppose any army that just tries to walk through, even if they're peaceful. And Paro Necho did not declare war on Yehuda. Rather, Paro Necho wanted to go meet the Babylonians. The asimon dropped for me when I was alerted to the map. Paro Necho could say to Yoshiyahu, what are you fighting me over Megiddo for? Megiddo is not part of Yehuda. It's not part of your territory. Why are you fighting me about passing through your territory if I'm not even in your territory? What's the answer?
War.
What's that?
War.
No. I think there's a better. You might be right. It's always possible that it's just a war, and that's where they ended up fighting. I have to admit that. But what Rabbi Lau claims is that Yoshiyahu had this grand vision of uniting the 12 tribes. He wanted to get the old band back together. He wanted to go back to the kingdom of David. He was not happy with the kingdom of Chizkiyahu. He wanted the kingdom of David. Ashur was gone. He wanted to bring back the kingdom of David HaMelech. Now that Ashur is no longer bothering us, let's take back our old ancestral homes. Right? At the risk of sounding a little bit cheeky, he might have said that I am fighting this battle on the unceded tribal lands of Zevulun, Yisachar, and Menashe. Right? That may be his argument. And who better to represent Zevulun, Yisachar, and Menashe at Megiddo than the scion of the Davidic dynasty. And so that is this moment. Now, the first stage of Yirmiyahu's career is being partnered with Yoshiyahu to bring the tribes together. They live together in this grand vision of putting the tribes together. That moment.
A question here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a little bit confused as far as who were the inhabitants of the land. Most of them taken into Assyria and mingled, and the Samaritans were put in. Other tribes were brought in, the Kutim and the other tribes. So how much of the population was really the remnant, Sherita Pleta?
We don't know, but he starts the parak, right? The parak Lamed Vav, Lamed Aleph starts. Sorry, where's the it says Ko Amar Hashem Matzachen Bamidbar Am Seride Charev. Right? There are those who have been the survivors of the sword. Right? We don't know numbers.
The question is,
we don't know numbers, but we know that there are definitely people there who had survived and would identify as with the term Ephraim. Right?
Well, there must have been a lot if Yoshiyahu anticipated that they would join him in the war to sub the Egyptians.
Yes, if this,
So,
yes,
but that,
100%. If this is correct,
but that runs contradictory to the exile of the Assyrians by the Assyrians.
Look, I guess at what point you have enough organization, you have enough of Sridim to reconstitute, especially after years of Assyrian domination, right? Those are it's hard to put that all together exactly, right? So Tov, let's just I assume this is correct for a moment, and just a couple last points because I will have to go to Mincha in 10 minutes. So a couple other things just about an introduction to Yirmiyahu. Is that Yirmiyahu is also, the second part of Yirmiyahu is going to be when Jerusalem comes under the puppet kings of Egypt, essentially Yehoiakim. And Yirmiyahu will be the king until after the fall of the Beit HaMikdash. He's going to, I'm sorry, the Yirmiyahu will not the king, he will be the Navi until after the fall of the Beit HaMikdash. Yirmiyahu is interesting in a number of ways. First of all, he never marries. Chazal say that he never married. I guess he was a celibate Navi. He is also the Navi that stands in greatest opposition to the government. And those 2 points may not be unrelated. Because if you're going to be the Navi who is going to stand up to the government, and you're going to be the Navi whose words get burnt in the fireplace, and you're going to be the Navi that gets thrown into jail, and you're going to be the Navi that they're going to try to kill in the middle of the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. So, if all those things are so, then you don't want to be walking around with the vulnerability of having your children, your wife, and other places that the powers that be can turn the screws of torture against those other individuals. And so Yirmiyahu is a figure who walks alone and more or less is alone for his lifetime. Another interesting thing about Yirmiyahu is we really see much more of a personal view of Yirmiyahu than we do for really any other of the other Nevi'im. We really get up close and personal with Yirmiyahu himself. We see his psychological stresses. We see the places he goes to. We see the things that he sees with his own eyes. The metaphors, the visions that he sees, the places he visits are all very instructive, and it's sort of how Yirmiyahu processes things. We will go to we will go to jail with him. We will go to we will watch his own words be burnt in the fireplace of the king, and we will feel his outrage for the abuses that take place in his day. And so it's a very visceral, very gritty Navi, and he is a very passionate social critic. So he has both political positions that he will articulate, geopolitical positions, and he will also be a social critic. Rabbi Binyamin Lau, in his book Yirmiyahu Goralo Shel Chozeh, I'll stop my screen, my virtual background here. Oops. This book, Yirmiyahu Goralo Shel Chozeh, The Fate of a Prophet. So Binyamin Lau says that if you want to identify Yirmiyahu with a person of a contemporary culture, you would look at him as a newspaper critic, as the op-ed columnist. He's the guy who writes the op-ed criticizing the government, telling them that their social policies are bad, etc. So this is a very interesting way of looking at him, but he is someone who does stand to a certain extent outside of the society in which he lives. Okay, so this is perfect time to end, and I will be happy to take questions.
Rabbi, does he get deported with the other Israelites to Babylon?
Mm-hmm.
You said he lived till after the destruction of the temple.
I am not sure. He seems to be aware of what's happening along the way. So I'll have to just double check that detail. It's possible that he does.
And do we know when he died?
I have to check that detail. I'm at the beginning of the book, so.
Okay.
I'm struck by just how small Judah was in those days and how large it is in our minds.
Yes.
Alex.
Yep. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, on the map, the Menashe and Gad, that's a huge, and part of Reuven, that's a huge area when you look at the map.
Yeah, it's like Montana. No, it's like Wyoming, right? Wyoming looks like a big state, must have a lot of people. Wyoming has less people in it than any other state in the United States, right? Even Hawaii has more people than Wyoming. Rhode Island has more people than Wyoming. Washington, D.C. might have more people than Wyoming. So if you travel in the Shomron, there are stretches of the Shomron where you just see hills and hills and hills and hills. Can be very, very sparse. But The but yes, I think it is considerably smaller than we gave it credit for.
A couple of things confused me about the map that you were showing us. The tribe of Shimon is down further south than
Yes.
Yehuda. Whatever happened to Shimon?
Shimon probably folds into and becomes indistinct from Yehuda.
Okay, and the second thing that confused me was I saw that the territory of Dan was over towards the coast, but I always thought the tribe of Dan was up north where the
There are
town
two.
of Dan.
There's Gush Dan and there's Dan in the north. They have split up.
Were they both part of the tribe of Dan?
I believe so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So Dan is in the north. Tel Dan is in the north, without question.
Yeah.
And Tel Dan. What's interesting is Tel Dan is referred to as one of the places where the golden calf was reestablished by the person who split the two kingdoms, Yeravam ben Nevat, and it is now the and there is a site there that you can see that helps you to really anchor that. And there's even a plaque there about, I think, the kings of Yehuda, which is interesting. All right, we
Thank
start
you very
Yirmiyahu. Yisher Kol Chachem.
Torah.